Admiral Kale sat in his big metal chair on the bridge of his warship. The ship was called Sovereign's Will, and it was the biggest, strongest ship in the Maltarian Empire's fleet. Around him, his crew worked at their stations, checking screens and pressing buttons. Everything was quiet and normal, just like any other day. The Maltarian Empire ruled the galaxy. They had been the strongest power for 3,000 years. No one could fight them and win. When they found new worlds with people on them, they took those worlds. The people had to obey or die. That was how things worked. Kale looked out at the stars through the big window. His ship was patrolling the edge of Empire space. Nothing interesting ever happened out here. Just empty space and dead rocks floating around suns. "Sir," called out Dane from his scanner station. "I'm seeing something strange." Kyle turned his head. Dane was young but good at his job. His green skin showed he was nervous about something. "What is it?" Kale asked. "There's a ship coming toward us. But it's not in our records. I've never seen anything like it." Kale stood up and walked over to look at Dane's screen. There was indeed a ship there, but it looked wrong. It was white and smooth, with curves instead of the hard edges that all ships had. It was also moving very fast. "How fast is it going?" Kale asked. "Too fast, sir. Nothing should be able to move that fast." Ren, the chief navigator, looked up from her station. Her face was pale. "Sir, that ship is doing something impossible. It's bending space around itself. That's not technology, we know." Kale felt a small worry in his chest, but he pushed it away. He was Admiral Kale of the Maltarian Empire. Nothing in the galaxy was stronger than his fleet. "Send them a message," he ordered. "Tell them to stop and identify themselves." The communication officer pressed some buttons and spoke into his headset. They waited. No answer came. "Try again," Kyle said. Still no answer. The strange white ship kept coming closer. It was beautiful in a way that made Kale uncomfortable. Imperial ships were built to look scary and powerful. This ship looked like it was built by artists. "Sir," Dane said, his voice shaking now. "It's stopping." The white ship came to a complete stop just outside the range where Kale's weapons could hit it. That was smart. Too smart. How did they know exactly where to stop? Ren whispered. Before Kale could answer, lights started blinking on the communication station. "Sir, we're getting a message," the communication officer said, "but it's in a language our computers don't know." "Put it through anyway." A voice came through the speakers. It sounded calm and clear, speaking words no one on the bridge understood. Then the computers started working, trying to figure out the language. After a few minutes, the voice spoke again, and this time they could understand. "This is Captain Park of the Earth vessel New Soul. You are in human space now. Leave this area immediately or there will be trouble." The bridge went quiet. Everyone looked at each other. Earth? Humans. They had never heard of such things. Kale laughed. It was a loud, mean laugh. "Humans? What kind of stupid name is that? And what do they mean? They're space. This is Empire space." He walked back to his command chair and sat down hard. "Tell this Captain Park that he is talking to Admiral Kale of the Maltarian Empire. Tell him his little ship is surrounded by the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. Tell him to surrender now or be destroyed." The message was sent. The answer came, "Back quickly. Admiral Kale, you have 10 minutes to turn your ships around and leave. This is your only warning." Kyle's face turned red with anger. How dare this nobody threaten him? He had 500 warships in his fleet. This human had one. Small ship. "All ships, prepare weapons," Kyle ordered. "Target that white ship. When I give the word, destroy it completely." His weapons officer started pressing buttons. "Weapons ready, sir." Fire. Bright beams of energy shot out from dozens of Imperial ships. They were the most powerful weapons in the galaxy. They could crack open planets. The beams all hit the white ship at the same time. But something impossible happened. The white ship didn't explode. It didn't even seem hurt. Instead, a blue glow appeared around it like a bubble of light. The energy beams hit this bubble and just disappeared. "What?" Kyle shouted. "Fire again!" More energy beams shot out. This time something even more impossible happened. The blue bubble around the white ship started glowing brighter. Then suddenly, all that energy shot back at the Imperial fleet. 3 of Kale's destroyers exploded immediately. The energy that was meant to destroy the human ship had been sent back at them, twice as strong as before. Alarms started ringing throughout the bridge. Damage reports came in from all over the fleet. Ships were hurt. Some were destroyed, all from their own weapons. "That's impossible," Ren whispered. "How can they do that?" Kale stared at the white ship. It sat there quietly, like nothing had happened. Like it had just swatted away the most powerful weapons in the galaxy without even trying. The communication system beeped again. Captain Park's voice came through, still calm. "Admiral Kyle, you now have 5 minutes to leave this area. My patience is running out." Kyle's hands shook as he gripped his chair. In 3,000 years, no one had ever talked to the Maltarian Empire like this. No one had ever made their weapons useless. "Sir," his tactical officer said quietly. "What are your orders?" Kyle looked at his fleet. Many ships were damaged. Some were gone completely, and all they had done was shoot at one small white ship that didn't seem to care. For the first time in his life, Admiral Kale of the Maltarian Empire didn't know what to do. The humans, whoever they were, had technology beyond anything he had ever seen. And they were not afraid of the empire that ruled the galaxy. "Send a message," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "Tell Captain Park we want to talk." The white ship called New Sol sat in space, waiting. On its bridge, Captain Park smiled slightly. Everything was going exactly as planned. Captain Park stood on the bridge of his ship, looking out at the Imperial fleet. His crew worked around him with quiet efficiency. Lieutenant Kim sat at the weapon station, her fingers ready over the controls. Dr. Lee studied readings from her science console. Ensign Cho listened to radio messages from the Imperial ships. Park was not a tall man, but he carried himself with confidence. His uniform was simple and clean, nothing like the fancy clothes that Imperial officers wore. His ship's bridge was also simple, with white walls and soft lighting. Everything was designed to work well, not to look impressive. "Captain," Kim said, "the Imperial flagship is asking permission to send a shuttle over." "Let them come," Park replied. "But tell them only 3 people, no weapons." He had been waiting for this moment for a long time. The Maltarian Empire was about to learn something that would change everything. An hour later, Admiral Kale stepped into the human ship. 2 of his officers came with him. They looked around nervously at the clean, bright corridors. Everything seemed too peaceful, too quiet. Park met them in the main meeting room. The room had a long table and comfortable chairs. Large windows showed the stars outside. It felt more like a place for friends to talk than a warship. "Welcome aboard the New Sol," Park said politely. "Please sit down." Kyle sat heavily in one of the chairs. His face was red with anger and confusion. "What are you people? Where did you come from?" Dr. Lee activated a holographic display above the table. The display showed a blue and green planet. "This is Earth," she said in clear, simple words. "It's our home world. We come from a star system that your empire has never found." "Impossible," one of Kale's officers said. "We've mapped the entire galaxy. There are no unknown civilizations." Park smiled sadly. "You've mapped what you think is the entire galaxy. But humans have been living in space for 500 years. We've been very careful to stay hidden from you." The holographic display changed. Now it showed a timeline. Dr. Lee pointed to different parts of it as she spoke. 500 years ago, humans left Earth in great colony ships. We call it the Great Exodus. Our people spread out across the galaxy looking for new worlds to live on. "Where are these colonies?" Kale demanded. "Show me." The display changed again. Now it showed a map of the galaxy. Red dots marked Imperial worlds. But there were also blue dots scattered everywhere. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands. "These are human settlements," Dr. Lee said. "We've been very careful to choose worlds that your empire thought were empty or worthless." Kale stared at the map. There were human settlements everywhere, Some were very close to important Imperial worlds. "You're lying," he said, but his voice sounded uncertain. Engineer Yoon entered the room carrying a small device. She set it on the table and pressed a button. The device projected a list of numbers and symbols. "These are the coordinates of every Imperial world," Yoon said simply. "We've been watching you for over a century. We know exactly where all your planets are, how many ships you have, and what weapons you use." "That's impossible," Kyle whispered. "Our security is perfect." Ensign Cho looked up from her station. "Admiral, would you like to hear recordings of your private conversations from last week? We have them all." Kyle's face went pale. His Empire's most secret information was somehow in the hands of these humans. Park leaned forward in his chair. "Admiral, let me explain something to you. Your Empire has been expanding for 3,000 years. You've conquered worlds, enslaved entire species, and destroyed anyone who opposed you. We brought order to the galaxy," Kale said, but he didn't sound very sure anymore. "You brought fear and death," Dr. Lee said quietly. "We have records of everything. Every world you've destroyed, every species you've wiped out, every person you've killed." The holographic display changed again. Now it showed images from Imperial conquests. Burning cities, destroyed ships, people running in terror. Kale recognized some of the battles. He had been there for many of them. "We've been watching," Park continued. "And we've been preparing. Every human settlement has been built with one purpose in mind." "What purpose?" Kyle asked, though he was afraid to hear the answer. "To free the galaxy from your Empire." Engineer Yoon activated another device. This one projected a 3D image of a planet. But it wasn't a normal planet. It was covered with massive cities that seemed to float in the air. "This is New Busan, one of our colony worlds," Yoon explained. "We don't build cities on the ground like you do. We build them in the sky using gravity manipulation technology." "Gravity manipulation?" one of Kale's officers gasped. "That's impossible. The energy requirements alone would be impossible with your technology," Dr. Lee interrupted. "But humans developed fusion power 300 years ago. Then we developed matter conversion. Now we can create any element we need from basic hydrogen." She gestured to the walls around them. "This entire ship is made from materials that don't exist naturally anywhere in the galaxy. We created them." Park stood up and walked to the window. "Your Empire has been living in the past, Admiral. While you were busy conquering and destroying, humans were learning and building. We've advanced far beyond anything your people can imagine." "But why show yourselves now?" Kyle asked. "If you've been hidden for so long, why reveal yourselves?" "Because we're tired of watching," Park said simply. "We're tired of seeing good people suffer under your Empire. It's time for things to change." Lieutenant Kim turned from her station. "Captain, we're receiving signals from 17 different star systems. The liberation operations are beginning." Kale jumped to his feet. "What liberation operations?" Park looked at him calmly. "Right now, on 17 different worlds, human teams are helping local resistance groups rise up against Imperial rule. We've been supplying them with weapons and training for years. They've just been waiting for the signal to begin." "You can't do this," Kale shouted. "The Empire will crush any rebellion. We always have." "Not this time," Dr. Lee said. "This time the rebels have human technology. This time they know all your weaknesses. This time they're ready." Ensign Cho looked up from her communications. "Captain, New Tokyo reports that the mining world of Kepler 442b has been liberated. No Imperial casualties, but all the overseers have been arrested. New Incheon reports similar success on Proxima 7, Kim added. The Imperial garrison surrendered without a fight when they saw our weapons." Kyle sank back into his chair. His empire, which had ruled for 3,000 years, was being taken apart by people he had never heard of until today. "What do you want from us?" he asked quietly. Park sat down across from him. "We want you to surrender. We want you to free all the worlds you've conquered. We want you to let every species choose its own future. And if we refuse?" Park's expression didn't change. "Then we'll make you. We have the technology. We have the numbers. And most importantly, We have something your empire has never had. What's that? We have the support of every species you've ever oppressed. They've been waiting for someone strong enough to help them. Now they have us. Admiral Kale looked around the room at these humans who had appeared from nowhere and turned his world upside down. Their technology was beyond anything he could understand. Their knowledge of the Empire was complete. And they had been preparing for this moment for generations. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Maltarian Empire was facing an enemy it could not defeat. News of the human contact spread through the Imperial communication network like wildfire. On every world controlled by the Empire, people heard whispers of a mysterious ship that had made Admiral Kale's fleet look helpless. But the real shock was just beginning. On the mining world of Kepler 442b, Commander Vex walked through the slave quarters as he did every morning. The blue-skinned Altarians who worked the mines kept their heads down as he passed. They had been broken long ago, or so he thought. Vex was proud of his work. This mining operation produced more rare metals than any other in the sector. The secret was simple. Work the slaves until they dropped, then get new ones. It had worked perfectly for 20 years. But this morning something was different. The slaves were looking at each other with strange expressions. Some were even smiling, slightly. Vex had never seen them smile before. "You," he barked at an old Altarian woman named Kira. "Why aren't you moving faster?" Kira looked up at him. For the first time in 20 years, she met his eyes directly. "Because I don't have to anymore," she said calmly. Before Vex could react, alarms started ringing throughout the mining complex. His radio crackled to life. "Commander Vex, we have a problem. Armed rebels are attacking the main security building." Vex ran toward the security center, but he stopped when he saw what was happening. The slaves weren't cowering in their quarters anymore. They were standing up, and they had weapons. Good weapons. Energy rifles that looked more advanced than anything the Imperial Army used. Leading them was a human woman. She was small and seemed young, but she moved with the confidence of an experienced soldier. Her name badge said Agent Song. "Commander Vex," Song called out as he approached. "Your time here is over. Order your troops to surrender and no one will be hurt." Vex laughed. "You think a few stolen weapons can defeat the Imperial garrison? I have 200 soldiers here." "Had," Song corrected. "Most of them have already surrendered. The ones who tried to fight discovered that their weapons don't work very well against our shields." As if to prove her point, 3 Imperial soldiers came around the corner, firing their rifles at Song. The energy beams hit an invisible barrier around her and simply disappeared. Song didn't even flinch. "Your turn, Commander," she said. Similar scenes were playing out across 17 different star systems. On every world, resistance groups that had been hiding for decades suddenly appeared with weapons and technology that made Imperial forces look primitive. On the agricultural world of Centauri Prime, a group of farmers led by a human operative named Agent Bayek surrounded the Imperial Governor's mansion. The governor, a fat Maltarian named Grex, tried to call for help, but found that all communication systems were down. "How is this possible?" he demanded as Agent Bayek walked into his office. "You're just farmers." "We've been farmers for 50 years, Beck replied calmly. "But before that, we were freedom fighters, and we've been waiting for the right moment." The governor's personal guards rushed into the room, but their weapons powered down as soon as they tried to fire them. Beck held up a small device. "Electromagnetic pulse generator," she explained. "It only affects Imperial technology. Our weapons work just fine." On the industrial world of Vega Station, the Imperial fleet base woke up to find that none of their ships would start. The base commander, Admiral Tor, ran to the main hangar and discovered human engineers working on his vessels. "What are you doing to my ships?" he shouted. A human engineer named Yoon looked up from under a fighter craft. "Just installing some upgrades," he said cheerfully. "Your ships are really old. We're bringing them up to modern standards." "Modern standards?" "You know, things like working life support, reliable engines, weapons that don't explode when you fire them. Your technology is really quite dangerous. We're surprised more of your pilots don't die from equipment failures." Admiral Tor realized that his entire fleet had been infiltrated. Humans had been working on Imperial ships for months, maybe years, disguised as maintenance workers and technicians. Back on the Imperial capital world, High Command was receiving reports from across the Empire. Every report said the same thing: coordinated rebellions, supported by humans with impossible technology. Intelligence Officer Major Thane burst into the emergency meeting room where the High Council was gathered. "Sirs," he said breathlessly, "I've discovered something terrible. The humans have been here for much longer than we thought." "What do you mean?" demanded General Kor. Thane activated a holographic display. "I've been going through our records for the past century. Remember the food poisoning outbreak that killed half the Third Fleet 5 years ago? It wasn't food poisoning. It was a biological weapon designed to only affect Maltarian DNA." The council members looked at each other nervously. "Remember the solar storm that knocked out communications across the Outer Rim 2 years ago?" There was no solar storm. Someone used a device to create electromagnetic interference. And the mining accident on Asteroid Base 7 that destroyed our main weapons factory? No accident. The explosives were placed by someone who knew exactly where to put them for maximum damage. General Kor slammed his fist on the table. "Are you saying the humans have been sabotaging us for years?" "Decades," Thane corrected. "Maybe longer. And that's not the worst part." "What could be worse?" Thane's face was pale. "Some of our most trusted allies have been human agents all along." He showed them pictures of various alien species who worked closely with the Empire. "The Zephyrians who run our communication networks, half of them are actually humans using advanced disguises. The Corvani who manage our supply lines? Same thing." "That's impossible," whispered Counselor Dahl. "We've worked with the Zephyrians for centuries." "No," Thane said. "You've worked with humans pretending to be Zephyrians for centuries. They've been watching everything we do, learning all our secrets, and preparing for this moment." In space, above the capital world, more human ships were arriving. They came from every direction, appearing out of nowhere as their stealth systems shut down. The ships were beautiful and strange, with designs that seemed to flow like water rather than being built like Imperial vessels. Captain Park's voice came through the planetary communication system, reaching every world in the Empire at the same time. "People of the galaxy," he said, his voice calm and clear. "For 3,000 years, the Maltarian Empire has ruled through fear and violence. Species have been enslaved, worlds have been destroyed, and billions have suffered. But that time is ending. Humans have been working in secret for centuries to build a network of freedom fighters across the galaxy. Today, that network is complete. We call on all Imperial forces to lay down their weapons. We call on all enslaved peoples to stand up and claim their freedom. The age of empire is over. The age of liberty has begun." As Park spoke, more rebellions started on worlds throughout the Empire. Slaves threw off their chains. Prisoners walked out of their cells. Entire planets declared their independence in a single day. The Maltarian Empire, which had taken 3,000 years to build, was falling apart in mere hours. And behind it all were the humans, a species that no one in the Empire had even known existed until yesterday. In his command center on the capital world, Emperor Mal watched reports coming in from across his empire. Every report was the same: rebellion, liberation, defeat. For the first time in his life, the ruler of the galaxy was truly afraid. Emperor Mal stood in his great throne room, looking out at the massive display screens that showed his empire. Red lights blinked everywhere, marking worlds that had been lost to the human-led rebellions. In just 3 weeks, over half of his empire had declared independence. The emperor was old now, having ruled for 200 years. His purple skin had wrinkles, and his once bright eyes looked tired. He had inherited an empire that seemed unbreakable. Now he was watching it crumble. "Your Majesty," General Kor said as he entered the throne room, "I have assembled the entire Imperial Navy. 50,000 ships ready for battle. We can still crush these rebellions." Mal turned to look at his top general. Kor was younger and still believed in the old ways. He thought that enough firepower could solve any problem. And what makes you think our ships can defeat the humans when Admiral Kale's fleet could not? Mal asked. Numbers, Your Majesty. Kale had only 500 ships. I have 50,000. No matter how advanced their technology is, they cannot fight that many ships at once. Mal nodded slowly. Perhaps Kor was right. Perhaps the Empire could still be saved through brute force, as it always had been. Very well, General. Take the fleet. Find the human home bases and destroy them. Show the galaxy that the Empire is still strong. Kor smiled and bowed. It will be done, Your Majesty. 2 days later, the Imperial fleet gathered in the Vega system, where intelligence reports suggested a major human base was hidden. The fleet was enormous, stretching across space like a metal cloud. Every ship was loaded with the most powerful weapons the Empire could build. Admiral Bayek waited for them with her human fleet. She commanded only 30 ships, but they were unlike anything the Empire had ever seen. The ships seemed to shift and change as they moved, like they were made of liquid metal instead of solid materials. Her flagship was called the New Busan, and from its bridge she watched the Imperial fleet approach. Her crew worked calmly around, her showing no fear despite being outnumbered over 1,000 to 1. Admiral, reported Lieutenant Wan from the tactical station. Imperial ships are powering weapons. They're preparing to attack. Let them, Bake said calmly. Remember, we're not here to destroy them. We're here to show them that their old ways don't work anymore. General Kor stood on the bridge of his flagship, the massive dreadnought Emperor's Fury. Around him, his officers prepared for battle. They were confident. How could 30 ships defeat 50,000? All ships fire at will, Kor ordered. The space around the human fleet lit up with thousands of energy beams and missile trails. It was the largest attack ever launched in galactic history. Enough firepower to destroy entire star systems was focused on just 30 human ships. But something impossible happened. The human ships seemed to flicker, becoming translucent like ghosts. The Imperial weapons passed right through them without doing any damage. What's happening? Kor shouted. Why aren't we hitting them? His science officer stared at his instruments, in confusion. Sir, the enemy ships appear to be partially phased out of normal space. They're existing in multiple dimensions at the same time. That's impossible. So was their shield technology, sir. The human ships flickered back to normal solidity, and now it was their turn to attack. But they didn't fire massive weapons like the Imperial fleet had. Instead, small devices shot out from each human ship, flying toward the Imperial vessels. Incoming missiles, someone reported. But they're very small. I don't think they can do much damage. The small devices attached themselves to Imperial ships and began to glow. Suddenly, ship after ship in the Imperial fleet simply stopped working. Engines shut down. Weapons powered off. Life support systems switched to emergency mode. What's happening to my fleet? Kor demanded. The enemy devices are somehow interfering with our computer systems, his technical officer reported. They're not destroying our ships, they're taking control of them. On the human flagship, Admiral Bayek spoke into her communication system. General Kor, this is Admiral Bayek of the Human Colonial Defense Force. Your fleet has been disabled. Your crews are safe, but your weapons are offline. I suggest you surrender before this gets worse. Kor's face turned red with anger. Never. The Empire does not surrender to anyone. Beck sighed. Very well. Computer, activate Phase 2. Suddenly, space around the Imperial fleet filled with new ships, hundreds of them, appearing from nowhere as their stealth systems shut down. But these weren't human ships. They were vessels from every species that the Empire had ever conquered. My God, whispered Kor's tactical officer. It's the Altarians, the Zephyrians, the Corvani, species we conquered centuries ago. How do they have ships? How are they here? Admiral Bayek's voice came through the communication system again. General, let me explain something. While your empire spent centuries building weapons to oppress people, humans have spent centuries building tools to help people. Every species you conquered, we contacted in secret. Every world you destroyed, we helped rebuild. On the display screen, Kor could see the alien ships. They were beautiful, clearly built with human help but designed in the style of each species' culture. Altarian ships that looked like crystal formations, Zephyrian vessels that seemed to be made of light itself. The galaxy has been waiting for this moment, Beck continued. Waiting for someone strong enough to help them fight back. We didn't come to conquer your empire, General. We came to free everyone you had enslaved. Back on the capital world, Emperor Mal received the news of his fleet's defeat with a heavy heart. General Kor's 50,000 ships had been disabled without a single shot being fired in anger. The humans had technology that could simply turn off Imperial weapons. But worse news was coming in from across the Empire. On world after world, Imperial citizens were learning the truth about their government. The humans weren't just liberating conquered species, they were sharing information. Citizens discovered that their empire had suppressed medical technology that could have saved millions of lives. They learned that food distribution problems weren't natural disasters, but deliberate policies to control populations. They found out that many of the dangerous alien species they had been taught to fear were actually peaceful peoples who had been attacked without cause. Intelligence Officer Major Thane brought the worst news of all to Emperor Mal. Your Majesty, he said, his voice shaking. I've discovered what the humans are really doing. They're not just fighting us militarily. They're releasing all of our classified information to the public. What information? Everything. Every secret the Empire has kept for 3,000 years. Every cover-up, every lie, every atrocity we committed and then hid. They have records of all of it, and they're broadcasting it to every world in the galaxy. Mal sank deeper into his throne. How do they have our records? They've been copying our databases for centuries, Your Majesty. Every time they infiltrated our systems, they took more information. They know more about the Empire than we do. On worlds throughout the Empire, Imperial citizens watched in shock as the truth about their government was revealed. They saw records of peaceful species being attacked and enslaved. They learned about planets that had been destroyed simply to prevent them from becoming threats. They discovered that many of the Empire's greatest victories had actually been massacres of helpless peoples. The psychological impact was devastating. Imperial citizens began to question everything they had been taught. Soldiers laid down their weapons. Administrators abandoned their posts. Entire planetary governments declared independence from the Empire and asked to join the growing coalition of free worlds. Major Han, a human special forces operative, led his team through the Imperial capital city. They faced no resistance. The streets were full of Imperial citizens, but no one tried to stop them. Many actually cheered as the humans passed. It's remarkable, Han said into his radio. The people here seem relieved that we've come, like they've been waiting for someone to free them from their own government. Colonel Wan, leading another team, reported similar experiences. The Imperial guards at the government buildings just stepped aside and let us through. One of them actually thanked me for ending the war. Emperor Mal sat alone in his throne room as human soldiers approached. He could have fought them. He still had loyal guards who would die for him. But what was the point? His empire was gone. His people had turned against him. The truth about what the Empire really was had been revealed to everyone. When Captain Park entered the throne room, Mal looked up at him with tired eyes. So, the Emperor said quietly, you've won. What happens now? Park looked around the ornate room with its gold decorations and massive statues. It was built to make visitors feel small and powerless. It was a room designed to intimidate. Now, Park said, we build something better. 6 months after the first human ship appeared in Imperial space, Emperor Mal sat in a simple chair aboard the human vessel, New Guangzhou. The ornate robes and crown that had marked him as ruler of the galaxy were gone. Now he wore plain gray clothes like any other prisoner. But this was not an ordinary prisoner transport. The ship's meeting room was comfortable, with large windows showing the stars. Human crew members treated Mal with respect, bringing him food and books to read. They were not cruel to their former enemy. Captain Park sat across from him at a simple table. Between them lay a document called the Galactic Liberation Accords. It was written in simple language that anyone could understand. This formally ends the Maltarian Empire, Park explained. All conquered worlds are now free. All enslaved peoples are released. All imperial forces are disbanded. Mal looked at the document. After 3,000 years, his empire was ending with signatures on paper. What happens to my people? He asked. What happens to the Maltarians who supported the empire? They get to choose, Park said. Just like everyone else. Some will face trial for war crimes, especially those who committed atrocities. But most will simply become citizens of whatever government they choose to live under. And me? You'll be tried by a court made up of representatives from every species the Empire harmed. But the trials will be fair, and you'll have good lawyers. The goal isn't revenge, it's justice. Mal signed the document with a shaking hand. As he wrote his name, he was signing away the largest empire in galactic history. News of the surrender spread instantly across every inhabited world. On planets throughout the galaxy, people celebrated in the streets. Species that had been enslaved for generations were finally free. Worlds that had lived in fear of imperial attack could now look to the future with hope. But the humans didn't take control of the former empire. Instead, they did something no one expected. On a neutral world called Haven, representatives from over 3,000 species gathered for the first Galactic Constitutional Convention. The planet had been chosen because it had no history with any empire or nation. It was a clean slate for a fresh start. The Great Meeting Hall was enormous, built quickly by human construction teams using their advanced technology. But it wasn't designed to be impressive or intimidating like imperial buildings. It was designed to be welcoming and comfortable for beings of all different sizes and shapes. Admiral Park, now revealed as the leader of the Human Colonial Defense Force, stood before the assembled delegates. Behind him sat representatives from every human world, but they took up only a small section of the hall. Friends, Park began, his voice carrying clearly to every corner of the hall. We are here to build something that has never existed before in our galaxy. A government based not on conquest but on cooperation. Not on fear but on hope. The delegates came from species that had been enemies for millennia. Former imperial citizens sat next to beings whose worlds had been destroyed by the Empire. Ancient rivals who had fought wars for centuries found themselves working together for the first time. Dr. Lee headed the new Galactic Science Council, bringing together the brightest minds from every species. In just months, they made breakthroughs that had seemed impossible under the Empire. The Altarians contributed their knowledge of crystal technology. The Zephyrians shared their understanding of energy manipulation. The Corvani offered their expertise in biological sciences. Humans provided their advanced manufacturing and computer systems. Working together, they developed medical treatments that could cure diseases that had plagued the galaxy for ages. They created food production systems that could end hunger on any world. They designed clean energy sources that could power entire civilizations without harming their environments. Engineer Yoon led the Galactic Reconstruction Corps, the largest public works project in history. Teams of volunteers from every species worked together to rebuild worlds that had been damaged by Imperial rule. On the mining world of Kepler 442b, where Commander Vex had once ruled with cruelty, former slaves worked alongside former overseers to build new cities. The harsh mining camps were torn down and replaced with comfortable towns surrounded by parks and gardens. Agent Song, who had led the liberation of that world, now served as its elected governor. In the planet's first free election, the people chose their own leaders for the first time in centuries. It's strange, Song said to a reporter. 6 months ago, these people thought freedom was impossible. Now they're debating tax policy and education budgets like they've been doing it all their lives. Similar transformations were happening throughout the galaxy. Former imperial worlds were becoming democracies. Species that had never been allowed to govern themselves were learning how to make their own decisions. The most surprising development was how many former imperial citizens chose to join the new Democratic Union. When given accurate information about their empire's history, most were horrified by what had been done in their name. They wanted to be part of building something better. Even some former imperial officers found new roles in the democratic government. General Kor, after facing trial for his war crimes, was sentenced to community service helping rebuild worlds his forces had damaged. To everyone's surprise, He threw himself into the work with enthusiasm. "I spent my whole life following orders, to destroy things," he said while helping to plant trees on a world that had been strip-mined by the Empire. "It feels good to build something for once." Admiral Kale chose a different path. He retired to a quiet farming world, where he spent his days growing vegetables and reading books about the species his empire had conquered. He never spoke publicly about his past, but neighbors said he often donated food to refugee families. The new Galactic Democratic Union established its capital on Haven. The planet became a symbol of cooperation, with representatives from every member world working together in the Great Assembly Hall. The government they created was unlike anything that had ever existed. Every species, no matter how small, had a voice in the Galactic Senate. Decisions were made by discussion and compromise, not by force. There were problems, of course. 3,000 species with different cultures, languages, and values didn't always agree on everything. Debates in the Galactic Senate sometimes lasted for weeks. Some decisions took months to reach, but for the first time in galactic history, those debates were happening. Species were talking to each other instead of fighting. Problems were being solved with words instead of weapons. A year after the Empire's fall, Admiral Park stood on the observation deck of the new Galactic Capital Station. Through the massive windows, he could see ships from hundreds of worlds docked together. Humans worked alongside Altarians, Zephyrians, Corvani, and species he still didn't know the names of. Commander O, his longtime aide, joined him at the window. "Admiral, the Earth Council is asking if you plan to return home soon," O said. "They want to know how much longer the Colonial Defense Force will stay out here." Park smiled. Earth seemed very far away now, though it would always be humanity's first home. "Tell them we're not coming back anytime soon," he said. "Our job here isn't finished." "What job is that, sir?" Park gestured toward the ships outside the window. "Making sure this works, making sure the galaxy stays free." He thought about the long journey that had brought humanity to this moment. 500 years ago, humans had left Earth because they dreamed of something better among the stars. They had found that better future, but not in the way anyone expected. When we first left Earth's solar system, I thought our mission was to explore and colonize. I thought we were spreading humanity across the galaxy, weren't we? Yes, but that wasn't the important part. The important part was that we spread the idea that all beings deserve to be free, that no one has the right to rule over others by force, that cooperation is stronger than conquest. Outside the window, a small ship was approaching the station. It bore the symbol of Earth, and Park could see that it was carrying new volunteers from humanity's homeworld. Even now, humans were still leaving Earth to join the great work of building and protecting galactic democracy. Young people who had grown up hearing stories of the Empire's fall wanted to be part of ensuring that something like it never rose again. "The galaxy is big," Park said to O, "and there are still parts of it we haven't explored yet. There might be other empires out there, other peoples who need our help. Our work is just beginning." A message came through the station's communication system. It was a transmission being sent toward Earth, carrying news of the past year's progress to humanity's homeworld. "People of Earth," the message began, "your children among the stars send greetings. We have good news to report. The galaxy is free, and the future is bright." Park smiled as the message continued, describing the wonders of the new galactic civilization. Humanity had indeed found its place among the stars, but not as conquerors, as liberators, as builders, as gardeners helping an entire galaxy grow toward something better. And somewhere in space, carried by radio waves toward a small blue planet orbiting an ordinary yellow star, the message traveled on. It would take years to reach Earth, but when it did, the people there would know that their dream of a better future had come true in ways they had never imagined.